This is Virgil, Texas, senior medical correspondent of Chapo Trap House, coming to you from an hermetically sealed podcasting chamber. There are 6 centimeters of plexiglass that separate me from any alien pathogens multiplying in society at large. I have with me a gallon of Soylent, an Evian water filter, Wi-Fi, and 1,600 rolls of toilet paper, a 3-month supply that should last me the duration of the current pandemic. The only portal between this isolation cell and the outside world is a quadruple-locked security door that can only be opened by a 19-character alphanumeric code known only to me and one other individual who is proscribed under the threat of contract law from revealing... What the fuck, Matt?
What?
What are you doing in the podcasting containment chamber?
I'm eating your fucking food. It's delicious.
How did you get in here?
Well, the door was open. I just walked in.
That's a fire exit. You're not supposed to open a fire exit.
Well, I mean,
The
tell
alarm
that.
will sit. It's a sign that says the alarm will sound.
None went off, and this is some delicious
You're supposed to
ramen.
heed the sign and not open it.
Nah, ramen's actually pretty good raw. I don't know if you guys have ever tried it that way. It's pretty tasty.
Have you interacted with anyone who has the symptoms of the COVID-19 virus?
I mean, I just last night I was at a spin the bottle party. Everybody seemed like they were doing pretty good.
You're supposed
a
to
few
do
coughs and sniffles.
social distancing.
Yeah, it was fine. We had fun. I'm good.
Oh, God, that better be a dry cough.
Hey, Virgil, can I have some of these grapefruit claws?
Chris!
I know that you don't like
Chris,
them.
when did you get here?
Oh, I'm always here. I am your shadow. I am gathering content in the night as you sleep.
He is your dark uncle.
Is that why Matt has a microphone? Did you give him a microphone?
Well, I figured since we were all here, we might
Yeah,
as well do a
let's do some
Beltway
potting.
garage.
Let's pot it up.
Well, it was a nice virus-proof content room.
By the way, you're out of toilet paper.
It was a nice virus-proof content room while it lasted. Guess we're all getting the fucking disease that kills Republicans now.
Darn it.
It's great. That's just great. I was going to do a 6-hour exegesis of the first chapter of Samuel Richardson's masterwork, Clarissa. But since you braying animals are here, we might as well pop open the hood of democracy, take another visit to the Beltway Garage.
Going down to the Beltway Garage. Gonna find out what's going on. Gonna lift up the hood and get all the sprockets. Put them in your mouth for a change. Beltway Garage.
Welcome back to the Beltway Garage, where we rotate the tires of public opinion and sell you the shoddy brake pads of conventional wisdom. With me, as always, is Patient Zero, Matt Christmas.
Hey. Hey.
Later, we will be joined by Branko Marcetic, author of Yesterday's Man, The Case Against Joe Biden, the only communist besides Lenin whose book is doing great right now. Let's get right into the state of the race. Last Tuesday, Idaho, North Dakota, Washington, Michigan, Missouri, and Mississippi voted in the Democratic primary, and Joe Biden won at least 4 of those 6 states.
Oh, snap.
In Michigan, the site of Bernie Sanders' dramatic poll-defying victory in 2016, the former vice president triumphed over the senator from Vermont by 16 points, winning every single county in the Wolverine state. Biden has an estimated 905 pledged delegates to Sanders' 741. 1,991 are needed to win on the first ballot at the purely hypothetical Democratic convention in Milwaukee.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. Come on, man. It's going to be a teleconference.
Is Bernie Sanders still in this race?
I don't fucking know. Who knows anything? What the fuck? We're all going to die. I mean, obviously, we're not going to die, but
I wasn't.
Honestly, the thing that I am more hung up on than even the pandemic shit is just what's going to happen to the economy. Like when people, this is a absolute collapse. We're looking at a demand collapse that's basically unprecedented in the modern era. And I do not know how we're going to respond to that. I don't know anything. One is going to respond to anything. And then there is the real fact that you're likely to see a healthcare system is about to get a stress test that it is not capable of withstanding. And I don't know how we respond to that either. I don't know anything. I have stopped thinking more than an hour ahead of my life. That is as far as I am planning or predicting anything happening, because I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen.
What's interesting about the quarantine measures going into place and many workplaces closing down is the implicit admission that most jobs are just paperwork factory bullshit jobs that aren't necessary.
Oh, dip.
Like, that's fine. Just stay at home. It doesn't matter. Whereas this is indicating to us like what the actual socially necessary work is, which is anyone working in transportation or grocery stores or at electric companies, utilities, and things like that, and just maintain, and of course the medical sector. These are the jobs necessary in order to how do you say it? Keep civilization a thing that exists.
Yeah, that thing, the civilization, that stuff.
But otherwise, it seems that most people I know are just like, my bullshit graphic design job. They said you're not socially necessary,
Or that you can work from home. And it turns out that's not a big deal, and it's fine. And the reason they don't want you to do that is all for HR, panopticon reasons, not having anything
honestly,
to do with the necessity of the job.
That's it. I mean, that's like kind of like the biggest complaint that people have is like, why do I have to go to these meetings? Why do I have to go into a fucking office? It's pointless. I can do my job. I mean, you don't really want to point it out because for a lot of people, they realize, well, I get paid for 8 hours and it takes me 1 hour to do my day's labor. And I feel like if I said that, like some gears would start turning in these, like, my boomer fucking boss's head.
Yeah, and they'd be like, "Oh, well, never mind."
One industry, I'm very concerned about as an entertainer is the entertainment industry, which has long been the recession-proof industry.
Indeed.
We still need movies.
We still need laughs, folks. In the dark times, that's when we need them more than ever.
But anyone who works in live entertainment right now is screwed.
And honestly, I don't know. I don't know how long it's going to be before we see another theatrically released film.
That's a good point too. Well, I mean, you can do a lot with CGI.
I just mean like movie theaters. That's not going to be a thing for a while. And those places aren't really rolling in money. They tend to have pretty narrow margins.
No. If you are not even just an independent movie theater, even like a corporate chain, you don't have enough money to last 2 weeks without income.
No, you need people buying those $500 popcorns.
And the same goes for, any number of, small theaters or comedy clubs, like any live performance space in New York. Often these are nonprofits, and they rely on fundraisers and the largesse of benefactors to stay open in the first place. They will all shut down permanently if their landlords keep charging them rent, unless there is an actual rent suspension just for these enterprises.
I think it's fair to say that we're entering uncharted territory.
As well, if they close down every bar in New York, which honestly they really absolutely need to do that yesterday.
I don't know, man. I don't think we're containing anything at this point.
I mean, the same would go for every bar. I mean, honestly, most restaurants are the same. If you're a restaurant, you don't have more than you can't stay open without income for more than 2 weeks.
No, there's going to have to be some sort of massive rent and debt jubilee, temporary.
That has to be it.
Of course, temporary, as for the duration of the emergency. No, we're going to see some amazing lifeboat socialism, but they're going to tell us, don't get used to the shit. This is just for now. Even though if we'd had this, it would have prevented this from happening. We're going to get rid of it as soon as the crisis has passed.
What's interesting is, so the Democrats late last night just passed the coronavirus emergency bill that provides paid leave, which they wanted to make a permanent entitlement, and Republicans said no, and so they backed down. It provides paid leave, sick leave to every worker in the country temporarily, but with two big carve-outs. One is companies that employ over 500 people are exempt.
Oh, you mean the ones that have the most employees?
That's
52%?
That's about half. That's about half the country.
Yeah,
half
cool.
the workforce.
And the companies richest with most probably likely to be able to afford that kind of thing?
The other carve-out was the Trump administration would be able to give waivers to anyone who employs fewer than 50 people.
Okay, so
meaning that 80% of the workforce would not be covered under this bill.
The two exempt groups are if your company has more than 500 workers, or if you have a Mar-a-Lago membership. That's those two type of companies that are exempt from this. Good to know. We're seeing firsthand our awful, bombed out, shredded safety net not being there when people start falling off the fucking tightrope. And we're gonna try. There's gonna be this desperate attempt to like jerry rig one. And I'm really, frankly, happy that this process of sort of improvising our way out of this massive crisis is going to be first in the hands of Donald Trump, and then maybe next year, fingers crossed, Joe Biden. I mean, either way, I feel like we're in good hands.
Joe Biden, who is champing at the bit to slash what's left of our social safety net, even now.
Yeah. How do we get owned so bad? Have you thought about that, Virgil? Have you considered this?
I'm not owned. I've never been owned.
Well, I mean, you did say, and I mostly agreed with you throughout the year of 2019 and even earlier this year, that Biden was not a threat.
Yeah.
That Biden wasn't going to be a contender.
And it looked like a good bet after Iowa and New Hampshire, where he campaigned vigorously, what counts for vigorously for him. And when voters met him, they said, no, we don't want that.
So
give me the rat.
So how did he own us so badly, Virgil? How do you think he owned us so badly?
The thing is, and we talk about this when we're off mic. The thing is, it's not Joe Biden owning anyone because Joe Biden is rapidly losing sentience.
Yes. No, he's not. Yeah,
he's the
smelling toast and drawing clocks. Yes.
He is the vessel of the donor class and the Democratic Party elites who woke up to the threat of Bernie Sanders more quickly than we anticipated and had a sway over the other candidates for the nomination that was stronger than we anticipated. To wit, that they were able to compel Pete Buttigieg, who placed second in Iowa and second in New Hampshire, coming way from behind, to drop out before Super Tuesday, which is utterly unprecedented.
Yeah. And I mean, I've read that there was that the guy who helped make that happen in the few hours before Super Tuesday was one Barfsack O'Crumbo himself, Barack Hussein Obama, which honestly, kudos to him, because we talked on the show about how he was sort of boxed in publicly by his fear of appearing less influential than he was, than he was thought to be by endorsing somebody who then didn't do well. God bless him. He figured out a way around that, and that was to do it all behind the scenes.
I kept having this grim fantasy of the call between Barack Obama and Pete Buttigieg, in which as soon as he hears Barack's voice, he just glitches out, and it's like, hello, Pete, this is Barack. And Pete's like, hello, Barack, this is Pete. Pete, I'm going to need you to drop out. Barack, I'm going to need you to drop out. Excuse me, Pete. Excuse me, Barack.
There must
mirroring. They can't. Yeah.
There must have just been feedback in the background, like when you call a radio station, but you don't turn your radio off.
Exactly.
It really does remind you that Barack Obama is, I'd say, the single biggest villain of the 21st century. From what he did in terms of taking all of the energy and anger at the collapsing system during 2008 and cynically leveraging it for his personal success, while knowing that he was going to be recapitalizing every bad actor who made it happen in the first place and slather a bunch of hope he changed bullshit on top of that. And then to hand off the presidency after spending 8 years assuring credulous libs that he had a plan and that you couldn't see it and that the next move was going to be the coup de grace. The next move, the 11th dimensional chess checkmate, ended up being fucking Donald Trump winning the presidency. And then he responded to that by saying, well, good luck, guys. I'm going to be parasailing with Jeffrey Epstein. Have fun. And he's just been off the grid, but not off the grid enough to not intervene to prevent Bernie from being the nominee. Instead, he decided to intervene on behalf of a man who he knows for a fact is senile and not up to the job, just to stop Bernie.
He's
the most joker-fied of all of us. I feel like all those people, all those Tea Party people who were carrying around those signs with Obama in the Joker makeup in 2009 that we all thought were just like, oh boy, look at these guys. No, they were the rightest people of all. He is the Joker of Joker. He is the Joker de tutti jokey. Just wants the world to fucking burn and make a bunch of fucking money off Netflix deals. It's really breathtaking. He is the worst man. So take a bow, Barack. Well done.
If we wanna watch the tape, the Bernie Sanders campaign had a strategy going into this race. We intuited what that strategy was, and it made a lot of sense. We're gonna win the early states, 3 out of 4 at least, and then ride a wave of momentum going into Super Tuesday, where we're treating California as an early state, and we're going to organize that early before anyone else has staff there. And they met every benchmark in that strategy. They planned it, and then they did it, and they won those states, but they didn't get the momentum. And that's like one law of politics that has just gone out the window.
Well, in this case, that was helped by the fact that the entire media was in a concerted effort to deny him any kind of momentum from it. And I think we all sort of, I guess, naively assumed that the mere fact of these victories would provide all the momentum. But no, it turns out that mere facts don't mean anything if they are being always blunted and questioned and undermined by a universal chorus that is all most people who vote in Democratic primaries are going to hear. And the hope was, and I talked about this before Iowa, and I talked about this when people were tearing their hair out about the bias against Bernie, that the Bernie strategy was going to require reaching out to people who aren't captured by the Democratic Party, either because they're part of its patronage network or because they've basically signed over their political brain to, say, MSNBC, and let them do their thinking for them, which is what most of these people have done. And if those people were the predominant number of voters, Bernie was going to lose. Bernie needed to get people who were not in that context. And the tragedy of the campaign has been that he has not been able to get enough of those people. And at the same time, there has been a suburban insurgency once Bernie won South Carolina, or once Bernie won Nevada, and it looked like he was a threat of people, of those suburbanites, those college-educated suburbanites, the ones that Chuck Schumer coveted so much in 2016. Just having a huge spike in turnout in order to defeat Bernie.
Well, I think also that there has been a realignment since 2016 that we have underestimated. And to wit that non-college educated white voters in places like the Midwest who voted for Obama twice and then flipped to Trump, they left the party permanently. And that was the base of Bernie Sanders' campaign last time around. And those voters just were like, no, we're full MAGA now.
Yeah.
Bernie was the guy who stood a chance of keeping them in the Democratic fold in 2016 or clawing some of them back in 2020. Now that's, if he's not the nominee, that's out the window.
Yeah,
but the other one is, and the counterbalance there is obviously, like you were talking about, an influx of reactionary, wealthy, college-educated white suburbanites who normally are Republican, and they certainly are far to the right on fiscal issues. But who are, for various reasons, appalled by Trump and his boorishness, and they are the never Trump reactionary sickos who are now entering the Democratic primaries and entering the Democratic fold, at least for now.
And they were not balanced out by new entrants who were not part of that. And because the whole gamble here is that the Bernie campaign was always a gamble just by the fact that it was an inversion of the traditional mechanism by which you try to seek power, which is you have a social movement and then a political campaign is something that emerges out of the social movement. Well, there's no such thing as social movements in the United States. There's no such thing as social anything other than media. Am I right, folks? So, so that means that they had to do it on their head. They had to use a presidential election, a presidential campaign to create a social movement. And to an extent they have. I mean, millions of people, unprecedented amounts of small donors and volunteers. We saw them in every one of the early states, an army that no one else could match. But the fact is that they were trying to get people who, for many reasonable, absolutely, justifiable reasons, have decided that politics is fake and that they don't care and that it doesn't matter. And I think that if those people could be reached in large enough numbers, whatever Bernie tried to do was not sufficient. Well, and what we realized is that we talked before Super Tuesday when we were trying to talk ourselves out of doom that Bernie has the army, he has the troops, Biden doesn't. And then we watch Biden winning in states that he didn't even have a single office in. And that's because traditional Democratic voters don't need to be canvassed. Traditional Democratic voters don't need to be contacted. They are self-organizing. They're self-canvassing. They watch MSNBC. They know voting is their civic duty. They do it robotically. The people that the intent it requires essentially no work to get them out for you if you are the one who is the option, and that's where Obama getting the field cleared for Biden did the trick. to get the kind of people who aren't going to be in that hive mind to vote, it requires so much goddamn work. And even with all that work, I think a lot of people are just too gone.
Well, there's one note is there has been increased turnout among young voters.
But it wasn't enough is the thing.
That's the thing. It was counterbalanced by increased turnout by the MSNBC resistance types.
That's no good. That's a bad
anyone
equation.
who has anyone who has a single positive feeling about Anna Navarro should be legally barred from voting.
And I got to say, yesterday I was watching Chris Have freak out. He's been freaking out about coronavirus for 2 weeks now. Every other tweet is about how this is not normal. This is the apocalypse because Trump, the Cheeto-in-chief, his corruption and his incompetence is finally going to get us all killed. And it's like, maybe you shouldn't be on the network that spends 23 and a half hours a day telling everybody that the only alternative to him is a different senile reactionary old idiot who is going to do. You really think Joe Biden's going to do a better fucking job?
It's not 23 hours. There's at least 2 hours where they just play lockup.
Yeah. You really think it's going to be a better job? And you're going to be like, oh, we're going to talk about coronavirus for an hour, and then I'm going to hand it over to fucking Joanne Reed for her to talk about Venezuela for 3 hours. Fuck off. If you fucking cared about any of this shit, you would fucking at least resign like Shepard Smith had the balls to do.
Well, okay, so let's go back to the tape for a second, because here's what was also unexpected. I mean, it was anticipated that at some point the establishment is going to find their candidate and get their act together. Right. But that happened more quickly and more precipitously than anyone anticipated.
And has ever really happened before, also.
The voters went in, they fell in line.
Yeah.
And these are, keep in mind, over 60% of Democratic primary voters support Medicare for all.
Who gives a shit? Doesn't matter. Nobody supports anything, or nobody has a we've talked about this a million times. Nobody has coherent beliefs. You got a quiz. You got a fucking a poll that gets to 60% of people saying, yeah, sure. But what do they think? How do they think? How do they think that would come about? What do they think the process would be to get Medicare for all in this country? It's totally it's going to have no coherence to it. There's going to be no coherent strategy uniting those 60% of people. So it just becomes a thing they believe. We should bring Elf back.
Well, we should.
I mean, honestly,
more puppets on TV.
But absolutely. It shouldn't be a CGI elf.
Oh, absolutely
I would be
not.
appalled. It needs to be
real
an absolutely
Muppet.
Creature elf.
I would prefer, honestly, some sort of a genetic freak that we made in a lab. That'd be fun.
Matt, just throwing this out there, just spitballing right now, brainstorming. Baby elf.
Okay. That's
now
epic.
We're talking.
Now that's fucking epic.
That is money in the bank right there.
Oh, my God.
Holy shit. Do you have Paul Fusco's number?
Get Frank Oz on the phone. Yeah, well, I mean, just thinking about this realignment stuff, I was thinking about how all the Russia shit worked. It did its job, not politically, but socially, because it's that thing. It's basically like Benghazi for libs, right? Where you have a network that's talking about how big of a threat, how dangerous every moment is, and that inherently makes people more reactionary, and that caused the spike in voters because they're afraid. The spike in older
right,
voters.
And that's the easiest. In terms of if you want to run entertainment news, which is what cable news is, that's the easiest emotion to prey on, right?
Right.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's just all about ad sales and the fucking investors in Comcast. But I want to get back to the race, if we could be slightly less catastrophic and just look at the numbers so far. Again, neither candidate has 50% even of the delegates needed to win the nomination. And crucially, over 50% of the country has not voted yet, including New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Kansas, New Jersey, Oregon, Illinois, Puerto Rico, Wisconsin, Arizona, D.C., Florida, Georgia, and, those loser states.
Or there won't be. I mean, they just announced they're closing a third of polling places in Maricopa County, and then the guy who they got to say that literally walked off in the middle of the fucking press conference. He said, I can't do this.
Yeah, let's play that clip if we can get
it. We're taking this from those voters had 41 voting locations before these 151. Now they have 151 vote locations that they can choose from. And then with that, we're also going to be providing those voters with the options and the ability to Go ahead, Steve.
Well, first,
Yeah, I mean, this is the stand miniseries when like the TV is just showing some guy like playing the harmonica or something. Nobody knows what the fuck's going to happen.
Okay, so I'm saying put aside the pandemic and just understand that that is what the race is in the absence of a pandemic. Don't fall for any of the bullshit you're about to hear right now. This is halftime in the Democratic race. Now consider how the pandemic impacts that. Already, Louisiana's primary, which was scheduled for April 4th, has been postponed to June 20th. Something of a self-own for Louisianans to place themselves dead last in the primary calendar, but, as I'm sure we all agree, a rational decision. Other states hustle to be first because people assume the race is over after the first state's vote, as many Biden supporters are assuming now. But Louisiana is saying, fuck off. It is irresponsible to continue with Tuesday's primaries.
Yeah, but they're going to do it anyway because they want to get it over with. They don't want to give people time to think about this, and they sure as shit don't want to give people time to look at Joe Biden on television and
That's
think about what it really
That's
means to make
They're,
that motherfucker the fucking candidate.
That's the thing. They obviously just want to get this thing over with. But when I say they, I mean the elites in the Democratic Party, who are not in charge outside of Illinois. They are not in charge of Arizona, Ohio, or Florida. Those are all Republicans making those calls. And they can make those calls to say, no, we're going to push this back 1 or 2 months, and then the vote will take place. Or maybe if 2 months from now, there's still a pandemic, and we need to devote resources to wheelbarrows, to
plague carts.
Yeah, the plague masks and lie.
Then we'll work
Bulldozers.
out some mail system or some digital system, whatever, like they have in other countries, and it works fucking fine. That would be, outside of any political consideration, the rational thing to do. The political consideration is this. If Bernie loses on Tuesday, that will no longer be an option to postpone the primary. And the consensus will be, hey, we played 5 innings, we're going to call the game. Irrespective of what the Sanders campaign does, and irrespective of the fact that coming out of Tuesday, neither candidate will even be close to 1,991 delegates required to win the nomination on the first ballot in Milwaukee.
But they're in charge of it, and they want Biden, so it's going to happen. And I mean,
well, does Ron DeSantis want Joe Biden to be the nominee?
I mean, I don't think they care. The thing is, there are also Democrats in the government. It's not, and they need them to cooperate at a basic level with the Republicans just to like keep the state functioning. And they don't. If they don't really care, they're going to defer to them. And we know what they want.
But if you actually care, if you are Ron DeSantis, you're the governor of Florida, you actually would look pretty bad if a quarter of your elderly population drops dead under your watch.
Well, yeah, but if that was the thing any of these people really cared about, they wouldn't have done half the things they've done in the last 2 months. I mean, if we could talk about, like, I think rational actor theory is not really explaining anything here. I mean, if Fox News was rational, they would not be having people on there saying to their 900-year-old audience, hey, guys, don't worry about it. It'll be fine. Since it's like, that's their fucking revenue stream. They need those people to buy gold point coins and fucking delivery catheters. And they're saying, yeah, no, go cough at each other's mouths. Go lick the doorknobs at fucking Cheesecake Factory.
By the way, are you sick of going to the catheter store? You sick of going to the catheter store every week? I sure am. You can get catheters delivered to your home, and Medicare will pay for it.
That's not a joke. That's a literal fucking commercial that's on Fox News like every 20 minutes. It's the same thing with Trump. It's like, these are your fucking constituents, and you're telling them to go die. Because sometimes... and especially in a situation of crisis where the system that you have fully invested in every sense, is not up to the task, denial is really your only option, and everyone's going with that. So I don't know. I don't think you can judge anybody through any rational fucking lens right now.
Well, the disaster, the crisis, presents an opportunity to disrupt the race, where, of course, the momentum in the past couple weeks since Super Tuesday has been against Bernie Sanders. But it's an open question whether he can capitalize on it when, for all intents and purposes, there is not a physical election happening, that it is a purely virtual race and we are in totally uncharted territory. And the question I want to pose to you is, what impact do you think the pandemic will have on actual voting Tuesday should those 4 states not reverse course and should they go on ahead as planned, which again is a totally irresponsible decision, irrespective of what you think about the race?
I have no idea. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know.
Ohio is...
I mean, there's what am I going to look? What was the last time we had a fucking election during a pandemic? 1920? I don't fucking know. I have no idea.
Well, you could guess.
Okay, fine. I don't know. But Biden's going to win. I mean, nothing's changed the momentum, so he's going to win them all. There you go. There's my prediction. Because they have decided. And the people who vote in these things get their cues from party leaders and the TV. And the TV and the party leaders have decided.
Well, the TV has stopped talking about the race. So at this point, I'm not sure. And again, it's a virtual race, so I'm not even sure where people are getting their cues.
Nobody gets... I don't... I mean, I was talking about this with Chris before we started the show. I remember the 2008 financial crisis and the way Obama used that.
Yeah.
Totally cynically, in a fraudulent attempt to gain power for himself. Totally aware the entire time that he was just going to recapitalize all the bad actors that made it happen and didn't give a fuck. And just destroyed basically anyone's belief that any politician is ever not lying to them. And I really feel like one of the things Bernie has had as a unspoken barrier for a lot of people is that memory of Obama. And so I feel like even though this is another situation where we have an awful Republican president seeing his awful policies result and seeing the greater capitalist edifices policies result in a crisis that it can't fucking handle, I just don't think we have it in us anymore to like imagine an alternative to it. I feel like we have fully embraced just a cynical fatalism.
Let's say this. You're 75. You live in Florida. You watch MSNBC religiously. If you do that, all you are seeing is wall-to-wall coronavirus stuff. And unlike your Fox News voter who is told that everything is, peachy keen, MSNBC obviously wants to prey on your contempt for Donald Trump by playing up, accurately, of course, how bad this is. So you're 75 and you're in the age cohort where there's a 10% chance you will die of pneumonia if you contract this disease, even with hospitalization.
Yes.
And a substantial chance you would be hospitalized. And maybe if you follow the news closely enough, you might get it at a point where there's just no more ventilators.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're old enough, sorry, we need that for a young person.
Italy is literally doing death panels right now. If you're 80 or older, they don't treat you. That's the new recommendation.
Would you go out and vote for Joe Biden, a guy you don't even care about, in a race that you have been told is over?
Maybe. I don't know. They vote. They love voting. They love it. That's the thing. They love it. And it's because they're old. It's nothing to do with generations. These smug motherfuckers like to be like, you young people, if you cared more, you'd vote more. None of them voted when they were that age either. They changed the voting age to 18 for 1972, and they got 15% of the fucking 18-year-olds voted. It's always been the case. So all these boomers now who vote like clockwork for fucking county rat catcher, none of them were fucking voting when they were kids either. They don't do it. Old people do it. And so they're going to do it. Because what else are they going to do? Wait for death? That's what they're doing anyway.
Pickleball. Even if it kills them, they're going to vote.
I don't think they think that. Old people don't think this is a big deal.
That is the other thing, is that
even if they watch MSNBC, old people don't think this is a big deal.
Young people are much more plugged into this thing, and that's the cynical version of this, is that the virus actually keeps more young people in,
right?
Because we're by and large much more astute about threats in the world around us.
They go out more in the first place, so they have more activity to curtail.
Yes,
old people, it's stay in your home. It's done. I don't leave.
Dare me to stay in my home more.
I only leave my house to vote and yell at a Red Robin waitress. That's my.
Let me frame that
excursions a year.
Let me frame that a different way. And again, Bernie does have the highest floor in this race. I will vote for Bernie no matter what. I don't give a shit if there's a pandemic. I cannot imagine someone thinking who is fucking in the age cohort that will die thinking I will vote for Biden no matter what.
I can't get in the head of anyone who would vote for Biden for any reason, so I can't get into their head enough to know whether they would get out to vote for him. I don't know. These people are death-eating psychopaths, and I don't fucking know. I mean, the thing we have to really get our head around here is that, like, generational politics are facile, but due to the specific distribution of resources in post-war America, age in the electorate anyway has gained a class characteristic.
Yes.
And that is a thing that we haven't really dealt with.
As well, the fact that the generous social spending overwhelmingly goes to the elderly.
Right. So they have no reason to want to change anything anyway.
Let's talk about this. But it is a purely virtual race. Again, it's totally unprecedented. A race where there is no face-to-face interaction, no public rallies or town halls or even press conferences. The candidates are basically max headroom.
Yes.
And I have a story, kind of a mini reading series, which I think is a first for the Beltway Garage.
Yeah.
This is from CNN's Eric Bradner. Former Vice President Joe Biden's first virtual town hall was a technical calamity as his campaign confronts the same challenges of unexpected remote work that millions of Americans are facing as a result of coronavirus pandemic. Great fucking framing there.
Yeah, it's like, oh, of course he was stammering and slurring and wandering off of screen. It's the internet. It's hard. It's tough.
His campaign wanted those who attended to be able to ask him questions, so it added an extra layer of complication to the tried and true method of broadcasting on Facebook Live.
It's not this fucking hard, man.
It really is. Hard. We figured it out.
Yes. Getting questions is not hard. We do that.
I set up that 2018 election night live stream in like an hour.
Yeah.
Those who signed up to participate could dial in on their phones or stream a video on Zoom, a business video conferencing app. Then the Zoom feed would also be broadcast on Facebook Live to the entire social media world. None of it went as planned.
Nope.
The start time of Friday's virtual town hall was pushed back by 2 hours, and then it still started 15 minutes late.
You know, it's interesting how they're focusing on the technical issues because that's not really the problem I remember from when I watched the clip.
As those on Zoom waited to watch, the video alternated between confused-looking Democratic Senators Tammy Duckworth and Dick Durbin of Illinois, as well as Vivek Murthy, the former Surgeon General and a member of a committee advising Biden on how to handle campaigning amid a pandemic. The event started with brief remarks from Durbin, who wasn't visible to those watching on Zoom. Then Biden came on, and he was visible, but no one could hear him. His audio was so choppy that it could not be understood.
That's why it couldn't be understood.
At one point, he stopped and restarted, but the audio problem hadn't been solved. He is clipping. This is the first clipping presidential candidate, which makes sense because he's from the clipping state of Delaware. None of it was being broadcast on Facebook Live as intended, leaving some who had planned to watch it confused. As we always feel confused when we watch Joe Biden.
I'm confused about why you would plan to watch it, you freak.
Murthy spoke briefly. Then the campaign went to questions from those who had clicked a raise the hand button on Zoom or had pressed *9 on their phones. The first person
using my rotary phone.
So how many paragraphs is this, and we still haven't gotten to him wandering off set?
The first person who was invited to ask a question instead offered a comment.
Classic Q&A.
Mr. Biden's speech was garbly the entire time. Listen here, Jack.
What is this, a film forum?
The campaign tried a second person who had apparently dropped off. By that point, Biden wasn't yet live on Facebook, but his team had found a solution to the audio problem. He was holding a cell phone under his chin, and the audio feed was clear. He was able to deliver clear answers for the remaining 10 or so minutes of the event. As the third questioner began, Biden asked, "Am I live?" As the fourth started, he wondered, "Am I on camera?" Finally, after that answer, Biden's team had figured out its technical difficulties and started the broadcast on Facebook Live, almost immediately seeing the audience jump to 5,000.
Oh, snap.
I want to point out in the middle right here, Bernie Sanders is probably wrapping up his fireside chat as we're recording this. Enough concurrent views to make him the most popular Twitch stream on Twitch, beating out Tfue streaming yelling at children on Fortnite.
In a place where things mattered, Biden going up on Facebook Live for 5 minutes and then clipping and stroking out and wandering off the set. Camera.
Watch your marks, Joe.
And then the next day, Bernie going out there and like actually being clearly being the only person who's competent and has an actual alternative to everyone dying,
yes,
would mean something. But I don't know if
The one
I don't
who
know
has
if it
been,
does.
who is in,
I don't know if it does.
whose entire political career has been vindicated by the current moment
yes,
that we live in.
You'd think that would mean something, but
Yes.
I don't know if it does. I don't know if it does.
As well,
you're talking to
honestly,
a Joker-fied Matt Crispin right now, and I really can't get too invested in the notion of anything mattering.
but this is shades of the rank incompetence of Hillary Clinton's campaign team. That they can't figure out what 12-year-olds can do.
Well, the funny thing is that even though he is clipping and drooling and stroking out, and his team is a bunch of Robbie Mookie and dipshits, he's still going to win.
I am.
The fucking economy collapses in the next month, and we're talking about like an 08 level cratering. He's going to win. You don't get reelected
As
in
the
that.
nominee
no
in
one
the
has ever
general
won.
election.
No one has ever won re-election.
I actually want to address that point.
Because before we move on to that, I just want to say that it heartens me personally that my dipshit AV skills running this spit and scotch tape operation here is better than the entire Biden campaign. Whenever I see an AV operation, I'm like, I could fucking own that. I'm like, yes, good job.
Matt could own this AV operation. I've seen Matt do live streams on his phone. He figured it out too. The other day, the hashtag resistance people, they got trending on Twitter. The Trump administration is over. And how many times have you heard that in the past 3 years?
See, it matters what means.
Hang on,
that, though.
hang on. A poll came out even after Trump's batshit Oval Office address. 42% approve of his handling of the coronavirus.
Yeah,
Not
and
just
if he gets 42% in November, he's going to lose.
That's 42% of adults, which translates to 46% of likely voters, which he got 46.9% last time around, which was enough to win in the Electoral College.
The economy has not collapsed yet, and that's happening. Okay? There will be a recession of significant size.
I think that's the last question. And that I think this is interesting because the past 3 years has just been unprecedented thing after unprecedented thing. And Trump has defied every single ironclad law of political reality. And the last one is, can a fucking president preside over a recession that is definitely his fault and still win re-election? And I think if anyone could do it, it's Donald Trump.
Especially if he just postpones the election.
Especially if, and as this is the hell world thesis, that nothing matters.
I mean,
there's no reality that matters.
That's why, I mean, I'm like I said, I'm trying not to predict.
And honestly,
anymore,
that's a heuristic that should have guided us this entire time.
Yeah.
Because every time you or I deviate from that thesis, we
get owned.
I don't want to. Well, I've never been owned.
Well,
but.
we got owned. Come on, be honest. No, we got owned because we thought things mattered. We thought that communication and grassroots activism and talking to people could get enough of us to pay attention and imagine an alternative and imagine a new way of doing things and imagine new politics, a new paradigm. And if it's possible, we didn't do it yet. I don't know if it could still happen, but the providing sense you get from watching the country descend into some sort of pandemic frenzy, a risk of a massive economic collapse, and a man who is visibly and clearly mentally declining being the unquestioned candidate who's going to challenge the other clearly visibly declining president. I don't know how you're supposed to think anything matters. I don't know how you're supposed to think that you can move, that the social fabric can be repaired. That's the thing that I keep coming back to. The idea that we have spent 40 years just stripping all the piping and wiring out of the building, and now the toilets don't work and the light switches don't work, and that's because we sold it all for fucking meth. We sold it all to we sold it all so that we could pretend that the rate of profit hasn't been falling since the fucking stagflation crisis.
I will be somewhat less of a doomer here because what I've seen is a level of self-organization among young people, not for their own benefit, a denial of immediate pleasures, not for their own benefit, but for the benefit of someone that they don't know. And we see that across the country as it looks like the majority of young people are voluntarily staying home, voluntarily avoiding social spaces.
That's not true.
That's what I've seen. That's what I
What are
see
you
in my
talking
own
about you've
neighborhood.
seen? I have no idea. You have no idea, and I have no idea how many people are staying home at this point. All I know is I've been out. Hell, we're out. We're disobeying that fucking thing.
No, I'm a
that
meter away from
selflessness.
you. I'm a meter away from
But
you.
I'm saying we're in the office right now. We left our apartments. We're not the selfless fucking young people you're talking about. And the people I see, I'm walking here out on the streets and in restaurants and bars. They're not the selfless young people you're talking about. So where? I mean, obviously, so where are they? They're home.
Fine, I can't.
But I don't know how many there
fine,
are.
I admit I can't quantify it. Fine. Some of that is anecdotal, and some of that is from my own observations.
I just don't think you can make any conclusions. How are you supposed to say you have any number on any of this stuff? We don't know. We know there weren't enough people in the through Super Tuesday in these states to countervail the old and the reactionary. We know that. We have the numbers. That's a number I know. I don't know anything else. I have no idea who's being selfless right now. I have no. And by the way, I don't know how many of those young people are doing it because they think they're going to die, and they're not because they're selfless. They just hear disease and like, oh shit, oh dip. I don't want that. I don't know. I don't know anything. I don't know anything. None of us do.
I have a lot of faith in the fundamental decency of people by and large, just not in the circumstances that mold them.
I will say that I'll split the side on this, in that it is very heartening to see so many people, and as I plan to do, basically not leave the house other than to make the podcast, especially online, basically voluntarily process information and make the choice for themselves that no, I need to take actions to support the greater good. At the same time, seeing the pictures on Twitter that I've been seeing today out of Chicago of 1,000 people gathering into Patty McFools.
Of basically SantaCon type cycles.
To do St. Patrick's Day shit is equally as disheartening as it is heartening that people have some kind of sense or obligation to do the right thing about this.
I would like to read a tweet. So AOC today posted a tweet saying, "Hey, if you're in New York and you're young, don't go out there. Don't do it. Stay home. We don't want to spread the thing." She was replied to by this woman, Katie Williams, who is a former Miss Nevada, who is running for some small bore office there and is clearly looking to be the old person's young person.
Sure.
For the future of that state. And she says, quote, "I just went to a crowded Red Robin, and I'm 30. It was delicious, and I took my sweet time eating my meal because this is America, and I'll do what I want."
Yeah.
I feel like that's just as
That's
prevalent, if not
that's a
more
MAGA
prevalent.
grifter reactionary.
But I'm
That's
just
not
saying
representative.
that's as prevalent. Well, yeah, but there's still people. You're just talking about people out in Chicago. This is as prevalent, if not more so, a fucking sentiment than what you're talking about. If it wasn't, we wouldn't be.
I mean, you say I don't have any numbers. You don't have any numbers on it either.
So what the fuck are we even saying? Why are we pretending we know anything?
Because this is the fucking Beltway garage, Matt. We're pundits. We're in the Beltway garage.
Well,
Put on your smock.
I gotta say, I feel like the last year has kind of revealed that it's a fake job and no one should have it.
Yeah, no shit.
Well, okay. I'm glad we're all in agreement then.
Yeah, what you want a real job? Don't be stupid.
No, I don't want to be a pundit. I just want to be a cut 'em up.
You want to be a real boy. You don't want to be a pundit.
Yeah.
Well, too bad. Too bad. This life wasn't. You didn't choose this life. It was chosen for you.
Yeah.
Punding into the void.
Yeah.
Let's move on to this. If Bernie were to concede the race after Tuesday, and again, keeping in mind that the consensus in this room is we do not know what will happen Tuesday because we do not know how the pandemic will affect either turnout or people's voting preferences. And two, that there is a big fucking debate happening Sunday night. If Bernie did concede, what do you think Biden would do from now until Labor Day?
He would be kept in a hyperbaric chamber.
Exactly. He would not be running against Donald Trump. He would do what John McCain did in 2008, which was fucking disappear until the convention.
And Hillary did that too. I think she was completely off the grid for the entire month of August.
I mean, we know it's the explicit strategy of the Biden campaign to hide him.
Yes.
Which is not stupid considering how fucking bad he does when people
necessary.
fucking listen to
the
him.
only way they fuck this up at this point is if he gets on TV too long.
I was like, does that give you a lot of faith in him running a general election campaign knowing that? The idea, ask yourself the actual question, does Joe Biden have the stamina to run against Donald Trump?
Actually, you know what? that's why, that very reason is why I don't actually think he's going to be the nominee.
Really?
I think if this pandemic shit hadn't happened, like say like, because we didn't know in but when Super Tuesday happened, it was still in China. Like, oh wow, that's weird. Well, it's not going to affect us, of course, because USA. Like say if it had been Corona got contained and it never got over here, and it's not a big deal. But Biden still would have won Super Tuesday, and he still would have become the front runner, and they would have all gravitated behind him, and they would have been running against Trump. Probably with the economy still strong, because like this, obviously the Trump economy was always incredibly fragile, but it was going to take some exogenous thing to kind of knock it over. And absent one, it was going to go smooth sailing probably through at least, I mean, you can kind of assume maybe there would have been some crisis, but most likely the economy would have been fine and kept growing through November, in which case Trump probably would have beaten anybody. Maybe even Bernie. So, let Biden
Top
go
line,
out there.
3.1% unemployment rate.
Yeah,
GDP, 2.
Exactly. Let Biden go out there. Well, who cares? We stop Bernie. That's what matters. If now, though, they have a chance. They can beat Trump. In fact, beyond that, they will probably beat Trump, but not if they have to run a guy who every public appearance for 3 months, he could literally drop dead, have both of his eyes turn bright red, or just start singing Camptown Races. And dropping a lot of gratuitous N-words. So I could totally see a situation where at the virtual convention in cyber Milwaukee, where they nominate Biden on the first ballot, nominate his...
Right, where the floor looks like that TV show Reboot.
Yep. They...
We have a candidate cube coming in.
They nominate Biden, first ballot, nominate his chosen VP, and then, like last day of the convention, he steps down for health reasons or something.
Yeah.
And then they say, all right, well, let's then acclaim the VP as the presidential nominee and then get a new VP nominee and then go from there. I mean, the thing is that his line is down. His line and the profit line are both going in the same direction.
Line go down, yeah.
Line go down, which means
his medical charts line go down.
Yes, the number is very
his
clear.
EKG.
It's like
his fucking brainwave.
Like his best days are just like holding the line. Like he's not getting better.
Yeah.
So that means that he can extrapolate even to the convention. He's going to be a wreck to a fucking election to November, beyond that. And I could see them being like, we don't want to blow a winnable election and hurt down ballot races, which they actually do care about, by having this guy on the ticket when we can just swap him out. And who's going to do anything? Who's going to stop him? I mean, the people that are going to be asking to do this are Biden delegates, and I think the one thing we can all agree about them is that they will do what they're fucking told. If they wouldn't be Biden delegates. Mm-hmm. So if Perez or whoever the fuck or Barfsack comes out and says we're doing this, they're going to do it.
Well, who do you think it would be then?
Well, see, the problem there is it has to be somebody with a huge name recognition, because you cannot start from scratch with somebody even like moderately well known against the president of the United States. Honestly, people have joked about it, but like the one that kind of does make sense in a horrifying, hilarious way would be Hillary Clinton. But I think they learned their lesson maybe about her personal unpopularity. I don't know. I mean, like if she wanted it, Michelle Obama, but I don't think she wants to run, so it wouldn't matter. I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to pull that, because like he's not viable. And I just want to say this whole thing, the Biden switch, the Biden turnaround, starting on Saturday before Super Tuesday, it is honestly the most disgusting and cynical thing I've ever seen.
Yeah,
because you've got a huge swath, basically the entire Democratic Party establishment, the entire media coming together,
like $80 million in
around free ads,
earned media,
around a guy who all of them, if you strap them to a lie detector, would tell you is not up to it. They know his brain isn't working. They know that he is smelling toast.
Well, but
they know that, and they're like, "Yeah, sure, he'll be whatever. He can be president."
Guy. Yeah.
They don't care. These guys who spent the last 4 years gnashing their teeth about what Trump's doing to the presidency are not even blinking at the prospect of putting a guy who's basically going to be at the mental age of an infant by November. Forget about January, in the White House. Just absolute cynicism. They don't believe in anything. They are the most disgusting and noxious bunches of criminal scumfucks on earth. And the fact that some of them will say that people like us are nihilistic or mean, and they are willing to put the fate of the fucking planet in Joe Biden's hands, knowing what they know about him. I want to fucking cough my fucking coronavirus right into all of their faces.
God damn it.
What?
I knew you had the coronavirus. God
I don't
damn it.
have it. I'm fine.
Yeah.
But when I get it, I'm going on tour.
It's on site.
It's on site. Once I know I have it, I'm going around.
You're gonna go to
coughing in faces.
you're gonna show up at Louis Gohmert's fucking constituent meet and greet that he's still
No.
holding.
All Democrats. No. I mean, honestly, this election should really tell people that, like, you see all these people freaking out. Oh, the Republican Party is the worst party in the world. And it is. It's like, oh, it's a bunch of fascists and psychos, and it's a death cult. Yes. But right now, it is not the fucking reason we're in this situation. The Democratic Party is. They're the worst party. And I would cough in the faces of every elected Democrat if I could, if I had it. Which
I think it's not irrational to suspect that's how the convention could turn out. But keep in mind, there is a big stumbling block to that turn of events, which is Joe Biden himself, who has in his entire life wanted to be president, to the degree that as his mental state declines, that is the only core thing that operates him at this point.
And that's where that West Wing Oval Office set comes in. They lead him in and say, Joe, you won. And they put him behind the desk.
Like the dictator of Portugal.
Exactly. And then they go, hey, we're going to actually nominate someone who has their marbles. Because the thing is that Biden does not have institutional pull within the party. That's why 500 people ran. That's why he was not able to keep anybody out of the race. Because even though he's a popular figure and had all the name recognition and had the loyalty of people who still love the Obama years, he did not have a network. And he did not have influence. If he did, all those people wouldn't have run against him. Which means that if the fucking party decides that he's a liability, he's not going to have any fucking strings to pull. They're going to have the whip hand, and they're going to fucking turf him out.
It's incredibly disheartening. The thing that we all know is that Joe Biden is not a candidate. The party is the candidate.
Yes, he is just a cipher, which means they can replace him.
The other funny thing that I keep thinking about is them taking the what they learned from Super Tuesday is like, oh, we don't need to run this guy. Yeah. He can just exist as an idea, and it would be very funny for me if like he makes like a 20-minute speech at the DNC, and then other than that is just like completely gone through the entire election. And they're just like, yeah, he's running.
There won't be a DNC, so what there will be instead is he will release an acceptance speech that will be just a subtly cobbled together, edited collection of his prior speeches, and it's like. It'll be like the rock bottom thing from The Simpsons. Like his tie will change color, his hair plug situation will go back and forth. And they'll be fine. They'll be like, that seems weird. It's like, what? Actually, it was great. You're racist for saying it's not good.
I do want to give, as we close the segment, a brief counterpoint to Matt's prophetic nihilism.
Jokerification.
It's Joker pill, okay? It's clown pill. It's the clown pill.
I know. We all know about Jokerification and the Hell World thesis at this point. But I want to leave people with this. We are not in the fifth inning yet. We're at halftime on Sunday night. Is there
a halftime in baseball games?
I'm mixing
There's
sports
a seventh inning
metaphors.
stretch.
I'm mixing sports metaphors at this point. Because earlier I alluded to it being the fifth. Whatever. God damn it. Chris. I'm doing my monologue. Damn it. Where the fuck was I? Okay, it's not.
We're at the halftime of the baseball game.
Those famous baseball halftimes we all love.
Look, we're at the halftime at the baseball game, and
I love going to the ball game and eating bouillabaisse at halftime.
On Sunday night, everyone is going to be eating their baseball paella, watching the first opportunity that we have had to make Joe Biden address the country for 2 hours straight and be challenged by Bernie Sanders on his core argument. The one thing over everything else that is the engine of his electoral successes so far in the first 50% of the country, which is that people intuit that he is the safe option to beat Donald Trump. And if voters assume that Joe Biden is the safe choice, he ought to demonstrate that he has the stamina to run against Donald Trump by first running against Bernie Sanders in the rest of these primaries. And he will make it clear that he does not have the stamina to do that. And these doubts will continue to emerge in people's heads. And there are arguments to be made by the Bernie Sanders campaign, which again is still a campaign that has a chance to win the presidency of the United States right now, where there is a level of uncertainty as we're living in this unprecedented crisis right now, where maybe it simply makes people more reactionary, as Matt argues, or maybe it turns people around to the idea that, yeah, Bernie Sanders was right, and we actually can't afford to nominate someone like Joe Biden. And I want you to know there are no Joe Biden volunteers. They do not exist. He does not have a competent staff, as we've seen in recent days. But there are Bernie Sanders volunteers who are in their homes, living in an obviously decrepit, failing society, but they're in front of their keyboards, which means that they can phone bank and they can text bank for Bernie Sanders. As 1,000 people just signed up immediately when the call was put out for virtual canvassers just in the state of Illinois. And I hope you will be among us if you are listening to this, and that you will not give up.
I mean, this debate tomorrow is a big deal because sports is canceled, and people are on edge.
Oh, is there a sports not happening?
No, there is a sports not happening. And I mean, every single moment that Joe Biden is on television is a potential disaster waiting to happen.
That is the thing that gives me the glimmer of hope, is seeing how quickly and thickly the primary electorate has hopped from candidate to candidate. And again, going back to the thing that I was saying earlier, is that the primary emotion that I see in the Democratic base is fear. And if Bernie Sanders is able, through this debate, to put the fear into the electorate that Joe Biden is simply not a viable candidate, I think that there is possibility for another game change, because you should look at Joe Biden and be very afraid that he is,
I will say this,
simply
though,
incompetent.
I have given up the hope that Bernie is going to be able to turn it around with policies, with a vision, with Medicare for all, even in the face of the pandemic. I feel like if that was going to work, it would have by now. It's really coming down to will Joe Biden's teeth fall out and then his diaper explode. That's what we have. And the thing is, though, there is a I wouldn't say non-zero, there is a 50% chance of that fucking happening. So we need to be able to be there.
We need to
in
be
these states
in the
to
right position.
take advantage of it.
We need to continue the organization, because
Yes.
while Joe Biden's campaign is still trying to open PDF, Bernie Sanders is still fighting for us, which means we are going to continue fighting for him. And let's give you a little bit of ammunition when you make these phone calls and send these texts leading up to Tuesday by introducing our special guest. Joining us now in the Beltway Garage is Branko Marcetic, staff writer at Jacobin, investigative fellow at In These Times, and author of Yesterday's Man, The Case Against Joe Biden. Branko, fellow book writer, thank you for joining us.
It was great to be with you guys.
When this book was, when we originally received a copy of this book from your publisher, Verso, I think. Is it Verso?
It is a Verso.
Okay. When Verso sent us a copy of your book, it was about 2 weeks before the Iowa caucus, and they asked if we wanted to have you on. And I just kind of chuckled and said, well, he's about to eat shit in Iowa and New Hampshire, so I don't think we'll have to worry about Joe Biden anymore after that. And as we have just spoken about, he is currently the front runner for the Democratic nomination this year. So how does it feel?
I mean, I'm probably the most miserable person whose book is doing well in history. I read and researched this man's career and obviously wrote this book and everything. It's just all I was doing was coming upon one red flag after another, that showed how inadequate he was for really tackling the moment that we're in. And so, yeah, it's funny because by the time the book came out, you had Iowa and New Hampshire, you had Nevada, obviously all terrible for Biden. And so when the book launched, I went on a book tour and it was pretty good, but the launch itself came a day before South Carolina. And, it was a very muted launch because I think people, just like you were figuring, well, this guy's finished. There's no way he's going to come back. And then within not even a week, within 5 days, it had completely, to my horror in many ways, flipped on its head. And so now we're in this position where people are taking a lot of interest in the book, which I guess is great. But, the cost of it is that Joe Biden is the front runner.
Wah, wah.
What surprised you more? Joe Biden collapsing so catastrophically in Iowa and New Hampshire, or Joe Biden bouncing back so rapidly?
That is a good question. I do not know where I would rank both of those. I mean, his collapse at Iowa and New Hampshire was, I figured maybe he'll lose. I didn't think that he would come, fourth and fifth, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. That was so catastrophic to his campaign, and it also completely undermined his whole selling point, right? I mean, his wife herself said that, let's be honest, Joe is probably worse on most of the issues that you care about, but this is just about picking the guy who's going to be most electable. And his whole thing was, I will be the one to win back those white voters that Trump won, whether they're conservative white voters or they're people who, switched from the Democrats to the Republicans in 2016. I'll win them back. And he completely failed to do that. It's not even that he lost to Sanders. He lost to several other lesser-known Democratic candidates, centrist candidates. So I just figured, as obviously you did as well, that when it came to South Carolina, the voters would go, well, there's no way this guy can actually beat Trump.
Right.
I mean, he failed to even win a primary so far.
He can't beat Amy Klobuchar.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And so now he's in this position where, I think that the overwhelming reason behind what's happening right now is because of this. I mean, one, it's the fear that has been drummed into Democratic voters for years now, not just about Trump, but about a whole host of other issues, Russia and everything. And Biden has been cast as the antidote to these things. Mm-hmm. I did a study last year looking at MSNBC's coverage in around August, September, if I remember correctly. And, it's astounding when you watch MSNBC that the discussion has nothing to do with policy or things like, the things that we would read about on the online world, the donations that Biden is taking, mm-hmm. The aspects of his record that are disquieting, none of that. It is entirely about electability. It is entirely about whatever the day's polls say. And the overwhelming message for people watching MSNBC day in, day out, which obviously we know voters have been doing since 2016, is that Joe Biden, he's the quote designated driver, is what they call him. I don't know if you guys would ever trust the Joe Biden of 2020.
We don't use designated drivers.
Right. But that's this idea that he's the most steady, stable one to not just go up against Trump, but then steer the country through whatever comes next. And I think people have just through sheer relentless broadcasting of this message have just swallowed this. And so in some ways it is a testament to, I think, the power and the influence of news media on the Democratic electorate. We have to remember that the Democratic electorate is very different, it turns out now, from the Republican electorate, which has very little trust in media. And these institutions still have power among Democrats.
Now, is Joe Biden not the safe option? Is he, in fact, the unsafe option?
It may shock you to find out that my answer is no. Given the name of the book, The Case Against Joe Biden, this is not going to be a very surprising thing. But for multiple reasons. I mean, the one being the most obvious one, which is that we ran this experiment already in 2016. Trump, this buffoonish, ridiculous, extreme right-wing Republican, won the election, and the thought was, well, we'll just pick the establishment-friendly, centrist, boring pick that is sort of cast in a traditional mold of every Democratic pick over the last 40 years. And she lost. And now we're doing that again. And we're not just doing that again, but even just the issues that hurt Hillary Clinton in 2016 against Trump, her corruption, her criminal justice record, her hawkishness on the world stage, her support of trade deals, her chumminess with Wall Street and corporate America. On and on and on and on. Biden has all of those weaknesses, but, turned up to 11. I mean, Clinton's big thing in 2016 was the 1994 crime bill and a speech of her talking about super predators. Well, Biden not only authored the crime bill, and you can easily find a speech of him making a very similar, a video of him, making a very similar speech as Clinton about child predators and the need to stop them. But the man is literally one of the leading architects of the racist system of mass incarceration in the United States. Biden didn't just vote for the Iraq War. He was one of the leading architects of that war on the Democratic side. He was the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. He was very much working with Bush to sell the Iraq War. The corruption, obviously the stuff with Hunter Biden. Just a week ago, I think, the FBI raided some company that was associated with James Biden, Biden's brother, who, like his son, has just been cashing in on his name from basically the beginning of Biden's political career. I mean,
James Biden is the name Joe Biden uses to kite checks. It's just Joe with a handlebar mustache.
I mean, it's just, I feel like I'm watching a car crash happen in slow motion, and, you're trying to alert people, and no one seems to be listening because people are still voting for him, in huge numbers. And I thinking that he is the more capable choice. It's madness.
So I think that the media obsession with Joe Biden has been built around his supposed reputation as the white working class whisperer, which obviously became the obsession after 2016 because of those Midwestern Obama to Trump voters who, among other voting blocs, were sufficient to swing the presidency from what seemed like a slam dunk for Hillary to a tight win for Trump in the Electoral College. Do you think that is an earned reputation, that Biden appeals to white working class voters? Because we've had a disagreement on this very program about that question, and I took the con side, and I'm starting to think that I may have underestimated that.
It depends on what you are meaning. I mean, is he someone who can command the support of working class voters? I think that he can. I think he's showing now that he can. Mm-hmm. But is it because of anything substantial in his record and his history that he's done for working class people? No, I think it's the loyalty he commands among that cohort of people is entirely because of aesthetic.
It's charisma. It's politics because he's a grinning, backslapping guy.
Yeah. He's a very charming man. He's he sort of has a bit of that working class affectation that he can bring out every now and then. He has the reason that he always brings up the fact that he's Irish, even though he's not really that Irish.
Absolutely. Plastic patty motherfucker.
Right. And, the use of malarkey, the constant use of malarkey, I mean, that's part of that. It's to remind people, hey, I have this ethnic heritage that I sort of have. I mean, one of Biden's grandfathers was Irish. That's sort of the extent of it. He's as English as he is Irish. But, I think that sort of is one of the tools that he has used throughout his career to kind of, I guess, signal to people that, hey, I come from the same communities as you and everything. But what's funny is that for all the working class stuff that Biden's kind of pushing now, his focus throughout his career has always been on the, what he called the middle class, which, if you dig into it, isn't really that middle. But that's always been his big thing. I mean, in the 80s, he was one of the people touring around with the DLC, going to southern cities, telling Democrats that they had to change, that they had to stop being so liberal, that they had to move towards the center and become more like Reagan. And as part of this pitch, he was saying, we have to stop looking after quote, special interests. And what he was saying there, we think of special interests as being big business, lobbyists and that kind of thing. In that period, this is a very common phrase. Special interest was meant, you were meaning African American voters, Latino voters, gay voters, feminists, poor people, organized labor. And there's actually a quote from Biden where he's talking to the NAACP convention in 1986. And he says, and this is the time when he was gearing up to run against Jesse Jackson, and he says, you can't pit the Rainbow Coalition, blacks, Hispanics, poor whites, gays, against the middle class. Mm-hmm. And really, if you look at Biden's rhetoric throughout the 80s and beyond, when he's talking about the middle class, he really means a specific sector of the middle class, which is more affluent, suburban, white conservatives, the kind of people that voted for Reagan and Nixon, and really have become, pretty important to the Republican vote. And even in 2016, Biden was looking at the aftermath of Clinton's loss, and he said, the reason that she lost was because she failed to talk about the struggles of ordinary people, of working people, and he said, she didn't talk about the family sitting in their living room poring over bills, trying to figure out how they're going to get the money to survive for another month. And that used to be our core constituency. And he says, you never heard about that couple making $100,000 a year, which is, exactly. This is at a time when, in 2016, when the median household income in the U.S. was $57,000. That shows you what Biden really thinks about what the middle class is for him. And that's really become the ethos of the Democratic Party. That's what they're trying to build on from 2018 on.
So Joe Biden's, one of Joe Biden's grandparents was Irish. So he is
his grandfather. He
is part Irish and part English, which means he gets his Armalite from the Sainsbury. Okay.
Well, what's funny about that? Oh, I'm sorry.
It is. Well, it's funny because I said it, and I say clever things. It's kind of what I'm known for. I do want to drill down on this one point, though. So he's, his public persona is Scranton Joe, but his actual constituency is reactionary, wealthy, suburban whites. Now,
and African American voters.
Yes.
This is
as we learned in South Carolina.
This is the trick that Biden's pulled off throughout his career. He has been able to win over Republican voting, kind of suburban conservatives.
Well, now, isn't that in assets in a general election? If he would say win the upscale affluent whites who tend to vote Republican simply because that is his core constituency and his messaging is devoted to them, and claw back just enough of the white, non-college educated Midwestern voters who voted for Obama and then flipped to Trump, not because he represents them or promises them anything, but solely for aesthetic reasons.
Maybe. That's certainly the bet that the party is making this year, and that the party has made for so many elections that they've lost to often extreme and incompetent Republican candidates. They can keep trying to do this, and maybe it'll work out this time. But the thing is, Biden's also lacking support from young people, which was key to Obama's victories in 2008 and 2012. The other thing is as well that people don't know about Joe Biden's record. They don't know who he is. They don't have the receipts, as the kids say, for all the lying and the dishonesty that he has.
So we know what the strategy is going to be for the Democrat side. They're all but broadcasting it. It's roughly what I just laid out.
Sure.
Plus, trying to drive up turnout in their traditional constituencies. Then let's say you're advising Donald Trump to run against Joe Biden. How would you blow up that strategy?
I can see this being taken out of context and being used against me in about 7
No, just
7 months or so.
This is role playing. So just say something like, okay, Just say, I support Donald Trump, and here's my advice for how to destroy Joe Biden, because I want Donald Trump to win. Just say those words.
I will say that I imagine as Donald Trump's strategist is sitting around, a table, possibly on a castle on a cliff as lightning and rain thunders in the background.
They're all spitting into each other's mouths for sport.
As this thing, they're trying to devise how we're going to run against Biden. I would say, one, they're going to go after his atrocious record on criminal justice. I know he's going to move left on this for the general election, but it's going to be too little too late. The man was instrumental in erecting the horrific system that exists in the United States. And Trump has very clearly and strategically done some things in criminal justice to be able to wield that over whoever the candidate is, most likely Biden. I would advise them to point to, well, I would not advise them, but his strategist will certainly tell him to run ads about his record on cutting Social Security and Medicare, those programs that are vital to seniors to be able to survive, many of them past retirement. And Biden will say again, well, actually, no, I'm running on protecting Medicare and Social Security. But I'm sure that Trump's advisor will simply say, well, that may be true, but look at what you've done for your entire career. Look at what you did when you were Obama's vice president.
What you've been bragging about explicitly, because Biden's entire career is one of saying the quiet part loud and the loud part quiet.
And that is exactly right. And they will also point to the many, many times that Biden has been dishonest about not just what he believes and what he wants to do, but simply just about details of his own life and family history. And they will hit his credibility. I mean, there's obviously, in terms of the corruption, we all know that for Trump, it doesn't matter if he comes off as a hypocrite. He has no problem doing that. And he will absolutely make hay out of Biden's corruption, the way his family has made money off him. The Burisma thing, which is genuinely pretty scandalous. The media can try and say that no, this wasn't a big deal, it was all legal, but it's very clear. Ordinary people will look at that and they will say that that's
right. And of course, Democrats refuse to admit that. The MSNBC liberal types, because that is at the core of what they impeached Donald Trump over.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So they would, they would say that, well, actually, the bigger crime is Trump doing this for inclusion, which is arguable, but that's not exactly a defense of Biden or Hunter.
It's a very weak defense, and we've already seen that it didn't work. Actually, I mean, impeachment made Trump's approval rating jump up.
I like that you mentioned credibility, because Biden's lies, we kind of write them off as the goofs of a senile man, but right now, many are talking now that Biden has a delegate lead over Sanders. Many are asking, okay, if Sanders doesn't win, what concessions should he and his supporters be demanding from Joe Biden in exchange for their support going into the general election? And even if Joe Biden himself wanted to, he wanted to be conciliatory, which I don't think he does right now, to be honest with you, even if he was willing to make concessions, I mean, I don't really care to get a promise from Joe Biden, because I don't trust him. I don't think he has any credibility. I mean, what's he going to say? I'll add some Medicaid expansion to the fucking 900-page Democratic Party platform that nobody reads and nobody cares about, and that I'm not even held to when I'm president. Like, that's not leverage.
One of the most absurd ironies of this entire election is that, I'm sure you've seen these takes of people saying, well, actually, if you look at Joe Biden's platform, he's really the most progressive candidate that the party has really ever run, or at least run in the last 100 years, right? Okay, so, and part of this is, he's pursuing the public option, and he's pursuing all these other, well, supposedly he's saying that he's going to do all these things.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. So he's written that down. But, for example, let's take the public option. I mean, the public option in 2009 was killed thanks to a very well-financed, relentless campaign that basically attacked it in the same terms that Biden is now attacking Medicare for all. Who financed that campaign? It was the private health insurance and pharmaceutical industries, who also, coincidentally, happen to be now bankrolling Biden's current campaign. So, when we take that into consideration, I ask you, with a straight face, can you really tell me that the same industry that killed the public option in 2009 is now going to be funding Biden's campaign because they really believe that he's going to fight for this? I mean, it's embarrassing to even put it in those terms.
It's also, I saw a story the other day that said, essentially, Joe Biden, he's thinking about how to reach out to young voters now. And you mentioned that he's going to do some kind of turn on criminal justice, which is really funny to imagine to me, that Joe Biden is going to try to do the woke intersectional language stuff to paper over his god-awful criminal justice record. Because as he famously said when he was asked how many genders there are, he said at least 3.
At least 3.
So that's the minimum. That's the kind of shit I think we would get from him as he tries to pander to say anyone who opposes mass incarceration.
Yeah, I mean, I think he probably would pursue his things because it's such, the mood has shifted so much in the United States and in the political landscape that there's not really any cost in pursuing it. I mean, if Donald Trump, this far right Republican, is also sort of making gestures at criminal justice reform, then, there really isn't any cost for Biden to do this. But I mean, another one that he said recently, I think he said that that he's going to adopt Elizabeth Warren's policy on bankruptcy. So, it seems like his campaign the message is going to be, elect me so I can undo the terrible things that I've already done.
Yeah. I saw someone claiming that this is proof that Warren has moved Biden to the left. And it's like, this is a good segue to another part of this conversation that's very, very important, because nobody has really spent any imaginative energy on this very central question right now, which is, what would a Biden presidency look like?
I suspect that the most likely thing that we're going to see, aside from just the Republicans inflicting defeat after defeat after defeat on Biden, if he ever even managed to make it to the White House, the most likely thing that will happen is that Biden will try and do another grand bargain with Mitch McConnell. That all the wheels are turning. That are putting this in place. They've already done the Reagan trick of exploding the deficit with a ridiculous tax cut and then saying, oh, look how bad the deficit is. We have to now cut spending on these entitlement programs. Yeah. Mitch McConnell has said that this is what he wants to do in either a Trump second term or after, at some point after the election. Biden, of course, famously has spent this entire campaign talking about how, no, it's still possible to work with Republicans. There are people that I can work with. And what are they going to collaborate on? To me, clearly the project that Biden and Republicans like McConnell have been trying and failing to do for decades, which is finally really cripple those programs. Because Biden won't look at it that way. He'll if he does it, he will do a speech where he'll praise Mitch McConnell. He'll say, "Look, bipartisanship is still possible. Look at this. The system can still work after generation after years of gridlock." And and then he'll make a perfect lane for the next fascist, a much more serious, ideologically committed fascist, to run to the next Democrats left and saying, well, I will actually restore these cuts. And so to me, a really big danger of the Biden presidency, and I have no idea how things are going to line up because, we've already seen how history can throw a wrench into our best laid plans with this pandemic. But to me, there's a real danger that Biden becomes the Hindenburg of the United States, that he unwittingly allows a very dangerous far-right force to take over.
So this would be like if Clinton were triangulating from day one, like not even the first 2 years of the Clinton administration where he tried to push through a kind of laundry list of liberal asks, like right off the bat wants to go after social welfare spending.
Well, I mean, I don't know whether it's going to be day one, but I feel like it'll happen at some point. This is what their careers have been leading up to. I mean, look, I will say that if that does happen, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will work. It could be that, whether it's Sanders stays in the Senate and other progressive lawmakers maybe mount some sort of opposition. Maybe there is a large uprising of people. There's protests against this. Who knows? We'll have to see. I mean, that could happen.
The left would have to resist Biden.
Yes, exactly. And it'll be a big question of what is MSNBC going to do? Are they going to support him in this? Are they going to loyally snap into line as Fox News would, or are they going to actually criticize him?
I mean, I think they would. I think they would mostly be loyalists. Maybe you have someone like Chris Hayes who would be against entitlement cuts, but I don't think the rest of them would be against it. By and large,
I would be very skeptical. Yeah.
Now, so this question is it's kind of kind of off the path here, but I do have to ask it. Why does Biden have such a high level of support among older African American voters?
One of it is he's a great kind of retail politician, at least up until now.
So the same deal is why he's good with white non-college educated voters, because he's a backslapper.
Look, part of being a politician is that you have to have charm, you have to be likable, you have to get people to, even if they don't really care or know what you actually support, that they they'll just say, well, you seem like a decent, good person, and I'll vote for you. And I think Biden does that very well. He obviously plays up this image of the kind of scrappy working class senator, fighting the good fight for the ordinary guy. He's famously takes the Amtrak to Washington and everything. So I think that's part of it. I think he's since the beginning of his career, he's been able to win black voters over, and I think that's sort of stuck. I think another part of it is that in his career, he very early figured out the trick that if there was a kind of scary seeming Republican that was going up against him, that he could run as right as possible and still count on the support of unions, count on the support of African American voters, liberals, because they would go, well, we can't do anything else, which is really working for him now, because he has been sold as sort of the only option for stopping Trump. And, we can't discount the fact that the guy was vice president to Obama for 8 years. And Obama is, especially among older African Americans, very beloved. He remains the most popular Democratic president in history at the moment or something. It's a testament, just the way that every candidate, including Sanders, has tried to wrap themselves around Obama. We saw that with the Bloomberg ad and everything.
Yeah.
Obama has a lot of power, and as a symbol is very, very influential within the Democratic electorate, and Biden has that. So I think all of that is sort of coming into this and playing a role.
Even though Obama himself has refrained from endorsing Biden so far.
Yeah, which, is a little bit embarrassing for Biden. But, Obama has justified it in the sense of, I'm going to let this play out. I don't want to influence things, even though we know he most certainly did influence things behind the scenes. Even if you don't have that endorsement, it's still, a lot of voters will still associate Biden with him because, Biden was, maybe not on TV every single day for 8 years, but he was constantly being mentioned. He was Obama's kind of zany psychic. For Christ's sakes, they wrote a book where they are solving mysteries together. So, yeah.
Yeah, Matt's book.
Hope Dies Last. Yes, very proud of that. Very proud of. There's more coming. There's going to be another 15 in the next year and a half.
Branko, here's my last question, and I think it's the most important one right now. On Tuesday, 4 very big, important states vote. And so far, Biden is still winning on the question of who is more electable. And that's probably the greatest source of his strength in this campaign. What should the Bernie campaign and what should we as messengers or phone bankers, what should we be saying to convince Democrats who are going to vote on Tuesday that is not the case? What is the most potent argument and succinct argument against Joe Biden that would peel off his support?
I think point out that he has the exact same weaknesses as Hillary Clinton that sunk her campaign, that Trump was able to run to the left on. I think also point out the fact that Joe Biden, again, he is the architect of the Iraq War. Donald Trump, not for lack of trying, but he has ended up in a position where he's going to be running as the first president in at least 40 years to not take the United States into a new war. Not only that, but already the Democrats have nominated 2 candidates who voted for the Iraq War, and they both lost. I mean, they had other similarities besides that, but I think that's really key. His stance is on Medicare and Social Security. Again, Trump is going to eat his lunch on that. I think also, if you can subtly call attention to the fact, this thing that we all know, but we are not allowed to say, which is that Joe Biden of 2020 is not the Joe Biden of 2015. He is tired. He is struggling to form coherent sentences and thoughts. And honestly, to me, he makes even the notoriously incoherent Trump, seem like a poet laureate. So I think all of those things I mentioned and some of these things I think are key. And I think also mentioned that, centrist establishment candidates do not actually have a good track record. Mm-hmm. Walter Mondale was exactly this thing. He was considered less risky than someone like Jesse Jackson, and he was walloped by Reagan. Dukakis too, Gore, Kerry, all these people. The one person that they always point to is McGovern, who is a completely different politician to Sanders. And meanwhile, you have this 40-year track record of just centrist after centrist being absolutely destroyed in a general election by, usually an extreme right-wing Republican.
It very much feels like we're watching 2016 all over again in slow motion.
It is.
Just in terms
like
of the confidence of Biden supporters right now that, there's no way we could possibly lose this election.
Well, confidence, and yet there's a lot of panic I can see among people who support him about the idea of him having to even sit down for a 2-hour debate and have to, formulate thoughts and ideas in real time off the cuff. Jim Clyburn called for the debate to be canceled. Mm-hmm. There was someone else recently I saw who was saying, well, let's just cancel the primaries and the debate and just wrap this thing up. I mean, to me, it is not exactly a sign of confidence that his supporters are saying, are so desperate to try and just shut down Biden having to appear in front of an audience, for a very regular thing. He's going to have to do 3 times in the general election, just so that people don't see him, basically.
Branko Marcetic, author of Yesterday's Man, The Case Against Joe Biden. You can acquire that if it has not already been hoarded on the internet from Verso Books. It's halftime in the Democratic primaries. We will see you Sunday night for the Chapo Trap House live stream of the pretty damn big Democratic presidential debate between Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden. I think the last